Chapter 1. Captivity. Jada and Zoë, two 12-year-old girls, hung helplessly against a rusted metallic wall, unconscious and restrained by thick electric cuffs above their heads. Their bare feet dangled 10 inches above the grimy floor. The remnants of their clothes were tattered, barely clinging to their small frames, offering little modesty. Their hair was dirty and matted, and damp grime caked their skin. The door to their cell creaked open, and a pair of feline-faced Fono Kari entered, their expressions twisted with disdain. "Wake up," one snarled, hitting a button on a control panel. Agonizing pain surged through the girls' bodies as they were jolted awake, their screams echoing off the metallic walls. This was their daily torment, a grim routine that had dragged on for months. The Kari pressed another button, releasing the restraints, and the girls fell, collapsing onto the cold floor. "Up," one of the Kari demanded, striking Zoë across her back with an energy whip, causing her to shriek and fall to her side. "Now," the alien commanded. The two girls wearily pulled themselves to their feet and were shoved out of the cell into the bleak landscape beyond. The landscape was barren and desolate, stretching endlessly under black, smoggy clouds that hung low, swirling ominously. Occasional flashes of lightning illuminated the gloom, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of burning metal and decay. They found themselves in a massive scrapyard, an endless maze of junk and debris. Rusted bits and small broken components littered the ground, mingling with skeletal remains of derelict machinery, and twisted metal beams jutted out at odd angles. Piles of discarded junk and equipment from countless alien races formed towering heaps, casting long shadows in the dim, flickering light. The girls stood amidst the chaos, the wind whipping through their tattered clothes and carrying the distant rumble of thunder. Despite the cold, they were soon drenched in sweat from hours of relentless labor. Zoë was picking through a pile of junk, searching for the specific metals the Kari demanded. Nearby, Jada struggled to pull a large beam from the base of a towering mountain of debris. "Help!" Jada gasped, her voice barely audible. Zoë rushed over, and together they began to wiggle the beam loose. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the scrapyard as junk began sliding down the heap. The girls stepped back in terror, eyes wide. A landslide of debris cascaded down, and Jada tripped, falling on her back. Zoë grabbed her arm and dragged her away just as everything came crashing down. As the dust settled, Jada sat up, gasping for breath. "Zoë, look," she whispered, pointing. Both girls stared at a huge robot-like machine lying on its side, its massive head and torso now revealed, the rest still buried under mountains of scrap. "That's a human titan from, I forget, but a long time ago. It's a war machine. My brother has a model of one," Jada explained, eyes wide with recognition. Zoë stood up, pulling Jada to her feet. "Let's just do what we need to do," she responded, uninterested. They had seen plenty of junk vehicles, big and small. The two girls continued their toil, the Titan forgotten as they resumed their endless task. Chapter 2. Discovery. "We need to hurry," Zoë said, glancing at the sky. Jada nodded, her hands already sifting through the debris. As night began to fall, the two girls staggered towards the bin, dragging a large sheet of metal behind them. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, and their legs trembled with exhaustion. Several Kari were waiting for them, their feline eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Drop that and get over here," the overseer snarled. Zoë and Jada did as they were told, releasing the sheet of metal and approaching the giant bin. Two Kari grabbed the girls by their arms while the overseer began to weigh their day's labor. Their hearts pounded in their chests, a heavy, fearful rhythm. They silently prayed they had met the quota. The Kari tapped a few buttons on the side of the bin and waited for the results. Symbols in an alien language popped up on the display. The Kari's expression turned to one of displeasure. "To the torture chamber with them," he declared. Zoë and Jada cried out in despair as they were swiftly pulled back inside the facility. Their pleas for mercy echoed through the cold metallic corridors, unheard and unheeded. The Kari dragged them towards their inevitable punishment, the harsh lights of the facility casting long, ominous shadows. Hours later, Zoë and Jada hung back in their cell, their bodies still quivering from the ordeal. The prodding with agony rods had added to their torment, coupled with the relentless pain from the electric rack. Despite their utter exhaustion, sleep remained elusive as the lingering pain continued to rack their bodies. Jada broke the silence, her voice raspy from endless screams. "The Titan. I want to look at it," she whispered. Zoe didn't respond immediately. After a moment, without turning her head, she finally replied, "We won't have time." "I'll be quick," Jada insisted, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "It might have a radio. I'll be quick." Chapter 3. A Glimmer of Hope. Morning arrived too soon, and as usual the painful waves from the restraints jolted them awake. Released from their bindings, they were sent out for yet another day of grueling labor. The thought of the Titan lingered in Jada's mind, a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. Zoe continued to work as Jada rushed over to the Titan. She carefully navigated the junk and debris, making her way to the top of the Titan's head. Struggling, she pried at the hatch, its weight compounded by the Titan's position on its side. With a cry, she managed to pull it open. She peered inside before climbing in, using the upper chair to step on, and then fully entered. Now she stood on the opposing hatch and gazed at the array of buttons, dials, and levers surrounding the two seats. The young girl couldn't make heads or tails of what they all did or what the labels meant. Nonetheless, she began pressing buttons and flipping switches, though without much hope. Suddenly, a flip of one switch made her jump as she heard a whining sound. The center screen lit up with the words, "Initiating systems check." Jada watched in stunned silence as a list of components scrolled across the screen, each followed by a green checkmark. Then a message popped up, "Stabilization control system inoperative." Heart pounding, she hurriedly climbed out, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just seen. Jada quickly joined Zoe in the grueling task of salvaging metal and hauling it back to the bins. "It works," she shouted, excitement lighting up her tired face. "It turned on. It said something about stabilization not working, though." "What about a radio?" Zoe asked as they sifted through the junk. "No," Jada responded, "but maybe we can fix it." "Us?" Zoe replied in disbelief, pausing to catch her breath. "Do you really think we can fix a giant war machine?" "It's old technology," Jada explained as they both lifted a heavy piece of metal and dragged it toward the bin. "Wires and circuits, like the old computers we studied and made in school." They heaved the metal into the bin and headed back to find more. "But it's not a computer," Zoe said, skepticism evident in her voice. "It's a Titan, a lot different. Besides," she continued, "we won't meet our quota if we waste time messing with that." Jada shot her a determined look. "So, it's worth it if we get it to work. Even if we don't, it's not like we make the quota all the time anyhow. What's a few more trips to the torture chamber? Better to try and fail than not try at all, right?" Zoe frowned, contemplating Jada's words. "I guess," she mumbled. "Look," she said. "Tomorrow we'll look at it quickly. If it looks possible, then we'll go from there. Deal?" Jada nodded enthusiastically. "Deal." The two girls continued their labor, their minds now filled with plans and possibilities. They discussed the parts they might need, hoping to find what they needed among the vast piles of scrap. They also debated tools, realizing they wouldn't be able to acquire any easily. Zoe, becoming a little less skeptical, suggested checking other human vehicles, which might still contain toolkits. This idea gave them a flicker of hope. They discussed the steps, actually finding the stabilization control system in the Titan, seeing if they could make heads or tails of it first. They also talked about time frames. They would work on the Titan a little each day, balancing their efforts to at least try to meet the quota and avoid more punishment. The thought of the Titan fueled their conversations, giving them something to cling to amidst the grueling labor. As the end of the day approached, the girls stood held by the Kari guards as the leader weighed their day's labor. They watched with bated breath, hearts pounding in their chests. When he nodded and gestured for them to be taken back to their cell, a sigh of relief escaped their lips. They had met the quota, at least for today. Returning to their cold, metallic cell, Zoe whispered, "Tomorrow we start. First thing, we find that control system." Jada nodded, her eyes shining with determination. The thought of the Titan gave them hope, a fragile flicker amidst their bleak existence. Together, they clung to that hope, dreaming of a future where they might be free. Before proceeding, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Chapter 4. A Dangerous Plan. The next morning, the harsh routine began again as the restraints jolted them awake. The girls were released and ushered outside, but their minds were on the Titan. After briefly collecting themselves, they exchanged a determined glance and nodded, silently affirming their plan. They immediately headed towards the Titan, knowing every moment was precious. Jada and Zoe climbed over the wreckage, trying to remember the path they took the day before. They reached the Titan without being noticed and quickly climbed into the cockpit, closing the hatch behind them. Inside, the Titan was dark, except for the faint glow of the instruments and screens. Jada's heart raced as she surveyed the control panel, feeling both excitement and trepidation. Zoë was nervous, her eyes darting around, knowing that if they were discovered, the punishment would be severe. Jada flipped the same switch as the day before, and the screen came to life. Initiating systems check, the familiar words appeared. Jada's fingers danced over the buttons, desperately trying to locate the stabilization control system. A few more minutes of searching revealed a small compartment in the floor, labeled with symbols that neither girl could read, but could recognize as a maintenance panel. "This has to be it," Jada said, her voice barely a whisper. She opened the panel, revealing a tangled mess of wires and circuit boards. "Now we need to figure out what's wrong." Zoë crouched beside her, examining the intricate wiring. "Okay, let's think. We studied circuits back home, right? We can do this. We just need to follow the wiring and see if something's disconnected or burnt out." The two girls worked tirelessly, their fingers moving deftly over the wires. They tested connections, checked for burnt-out circuits, and whispered encouragements to each other. Hours passed, and sweat dripped down their faces, but they finally spotted a broken wire, hanging loosely from the board. "There!" Zoë exclaimed softly, her eyes lighting up with hope. "If we can reconnect this, it might fix the stabilization." Jada nodded. "We need a tool to fix it." She knew they were short on time, and the tools needed were not readily available. "We have to get back to work or they'll notice." The girls quickly closed the panel and climbed out of the Titan, trying to appear as though they had been searching for scrap all along. They joined the other workers, the hope of the Titan burning brightly in their minds as they labored under the harsh eyes of the Kari. As the day dragged on, they made sure to bring in enough metal to meet the quota. At the end of the day, when they managed to fulfill the requirement, the girls exchanged a quick, relieved smile. The routine of the harsh days and torturous nights would not be enough to break them. Later, back in their cell, the two girls whispered under their breaths, planning their next move. "We need to find something to fix that wire," Jada said, determined to make their plan work. Zoë nodded, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. "Maybe there's something in the junk piles we can use. We'll look tomorrow," she replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. The girls fell into an uneasy sleep, dreams filled with visions of the Titan rising from the scrapyard, a beacon of hope in the darkness of their captivity. Chapter 5. Tool Hunt. With the break of dawn, the two girls were jolted awake by the usual electric surge, their eyes snapping open as the restraints released them. The moment they were pushed outside to work, they made a beeline for the scrapyard, their determination unwavering. Zoë and Jada climbed the mounds of debris, their eyes scanning the heaps of metal for anything resembling a tool. They had a mission, and every fiber of their being was focused on finding what they needed to fix the Titan. Zoë spotted a glint of metal beneath a pile of rusted machinery. She dug through the debris, ignoring the cuts and scrapes that marred her hands, and pulled out a rusted pair of pliers. "This might work," she said, holding up her find triumphantly. Jada smiled, her face smeared with dirt. "Let's keep looking, just in case. We might find more." The girls continued their search, uncovering a few more basic tools: a screwdriver with a chipped tip, a wrench with a broken handle, and some wire cutters. Each find filled them with a renewed sense of hope and determination. The sun climbed higher in the sky as the day wore on, and they finally returned to the Titan. "We have to be quick," Jada said, glancing nervously around the yard to make sure no one was watching. They climbed into the cockpit and got to work, using the tools they had scavenged. With careful hands, Zoë and Jada twisted wires together, secured them with makeshift insulation from scraps of rubber, and reconnected the loose wire they had found the day before. The two girls exchanged a look, their hearts pounding in their chests. "Moment of truth," Jada whispered, her voice trembling with anticipation. She flipped the switch, and the system whirred to life. The screen flickered, displaying messages they couldn't read, and a low hum filled the air as the Titan's systems powered up. Jada and Zoë held their breath, watching the screen with wide eyes. "Stabilization control system operational," the screen finally displayed. Zoe's eyes sparkled with excitement. "We did it, Jada. We fixed it." Jada couldn't contain her grin, her eyes shining with triumph. "Yeah, we did," she replied, her voice filled with wonder. But their moment of victory was short-lived. The sound of footsteps echoed from outside, and the girls froze, their hearts dropping in sudden fear. "Quick, close it up," Zoe whispered urgently. They scrambled to close the panel, clambering out of the cockpit and closing the hatch just as two Kari guards approached. The girls scrambled back over the pile of debris, trying to look busy as the guards surveyed them suspiciously. "You two," one of the Kari barked, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" Jada's mind raced and she spoke up, trying to sound nonchalant. "Just looking for good metal. Found some tools," she said, holding up the rusted pliers as evidence. The Kari glared at them, clearly skeptical but unwilling to waste more time on what seemed to be a minor issue. "Get back to work," he snapped. The girls nodded, relief flooding through them as the guards walked away. Their hearts were still racing, but they had accomplished what they had set out to do. The Titan was operational, a beacon of hope in the scrapyard. Chapter 6. A Plan to Escape. As the two girls toiled under the watchful eyes of their captors, they now held the key to their escape, the Titan. Zoe and Jada worked silently, but their minds were alive with plans and possibilities. Later that night, back in their cell, they huddled together, whispering their ideas. "We have to be careful," Zoe said, her eyes serious. "If they find out what we're up to, we'll never get another chance." Jada nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to figure out how to operate the Titan. It might take some time, but we can do it." "There's probably a manual inside, something to help us figure it out," Zoe suggested. "We need to spend more time inside, but we have to make sure we're not seen." Jada agreed. "Let's try to sneak in there whenever we can. We'll learn as much as possible, then use it to escape." Over the next few days, the girls continued their plan. They worked tirelessly during the day, making sure to meet their quotas to avoid arousing suspicion. In between, they slipped into the Titan whenever they could, learning the controls and deciphering the complex systems. Inside the Titan, they discovered an old manual, written in a language they barely recognized, but with diagrams that helped them understand the machine's workings. They practiced maneuvering the massive robot, trying to get a feel for its movements while ensuring they didn't make any noticeable noise. Their skills grew with each passing day, and so did their confidence. The Titan became their sanctuary, a place where they could dream of freedom and plot their escape. It was a delicate balance, their hope tempered by the constant fear of discovery. Jada and Zoe whispered their plans at night, discussing routes and contingencies. They knew the Titan's capabilities, its weapons, and its weaknesses. They planned their escape down to the smallest detail, knowing they would only get one chance. Chapter 7. The Escape. The day finally arrived, a day that started like any other, but felt different. Zoe and Jada woke up, their hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. They exchanged a glance as they were released from their restraints and headed into the scrapyard. The air was heavy with tension, the sky dark and foreboding. The girls moved with purpose, working diligently as they always did, but today they were waiting for the right moment. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the scrapyard, they knew it was time. The guards were distracted, and the other workers were focused on their tasks. Zoe and Jada slipped away, heading straight for the Titan. Their hearts raced as they climbed inside, closing the hatch behind them. The interior felt familiar now, the controls an extension of their will. They powered up the Titan, the screens and controls lighting up around them. Zoe took the pilot's seat, her hand steady on the controls. Jada sat beside her, ready to assist with the systems. "Ready?" Zoe asked, her voice calm but determined. Jada nodded, her eyes filled with resolve. "Let's do this." Zoe activated the Titan's engines and the massive robot hummed to life. The ground trembled as the Titan rose, its joints creaking with the effort. The sound was deafening, drawing the attention of everyone in the yard. The Kari guards shouted in alarm, rushing towards the Titan with weapons drawn. But it was too late. Zoe and Jada had already begun to move, the Titan's massive legs carrying them forward, crushing debris underfoot. The girls maneuvered the Titan with precision, dodging the guards' attacks and heading for the perimeter fence. The Titan's weapons fired, clearing a path through the obstacles and scattering the Kari forces. The fence loomed ahead, a barrier that had once seemed insurmountable. But now, inside the Titan, it was just another obstacle to overcome. Zoe pushed the Titan to full speed, and they crashed through the fence, leaving a trail of destruction behind. The open desert stretched out before them, a vast expanse of freedom. Zoë and Jada pushed the Titan forward, leaving the scrapyard and the Kari far behind. The wind whipped through the cockpit as they moved, their hearts soaring with the realization that they had done it. They were free. If you enjoy this video, then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell.